our dear viewers, and welcome to a new edition of our program Africa Today. Today's edition is dedicated to a very important visit by Mauritania's President Mohamed Ould Ghazouani to Cairo. Earlier today, President Abdel Fattah Sisi received Mauritania's President Mohamed Ould Ghazouani in Cairo in Al Ittihadiyya Presidential Palace. An official reception was held for the Mauritanian head of state before the talks between the two sides. Officials described ties between Cairo and Nouakchott as special and historical. They said that after 2013, many visits were carried out between the two sides. And Mauritania is a northwestern African country with 90% of its territory situated in the Sahara. To shed light on the issue, we are very much delighted to be joined over the phone by Dr. Dorra Faiani, our economic expert. Dr. Faiani, good afternoon to you.
Thank you. Thank you for welcoming me. If you allow me, I'll just correct a little small thing. It's Dorra Faiani.
Yes, Dr. Dorra Faiani, we are very much delighted to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Faiani, how would you describe the ties between Cairo and Nouakchott?
I think it's a very important move because Egypt has taken the lead in a number of African issues, whether climate change during the COP27 or the issues of mobilizing funds, special funds for climate change in Africa.
Yes.
And of course, Mauritania being primarily an arid desert, not a desert, but an arid land, the issue of climate change and climate change mitigation is very important.
Yes. Dr. Faiani, how important is it for Cairo to strengthen ties with the Eastern African states?
Well, it is extremely important because, again, it's not just that Egypt has taken a leading position on a number of issues in Africa, but it also is that up till now, Egypt has mainly been looking at further down in Africa, building up ties with Eastern African countries, Western African countries, and of course, Southern African countries. The fact that it now works on building up relations with Mauritania, Mauritania is part of the North African countries. And therefore, building up a solid cooperation with another North African countries, because like this, you have the two heads of Africa, so to speak, Egypt on one side and Mauritania on the other. So it is very important to work on building up cooperation with the Northern African countries as well.
Yes. Doctor, also what common issues bring together Cairo and Nouakchott?
Well, there are, of course, the issues of adopting climate change programs which could benefit both countries. That's very important. The other aspect is that Mauritania is known for being a pastoral country, a country of herdsmen with a lot of animal wealth. And of course, we, and this is very correct, are looking at diversifying our sources of imports of the food we don't produce enough of, such as animal production, animal wealth, let's say, and therefore it is by far better to do it among African countries than doing trade with countries outside of Africa.
Indeed.
So there is a very important trade component which would be targeting the wealth of Mauritania in animal production, and on the other hand, Egypt is much more developed in food processing factories. So building up joint venture projects in both countries would make a lot of sense.
Indeed. Dr. Faiani, also at the celebration of the anniversary of the opening of the Egyptian Cultural Center in Nouakchott in 2021, the Egyptian ambassador to Mauritania held the military ties with the Sahel countries. How do you weigh the military ties between Cairo and the Sahel countries on this military level?
Well, of course, these are delicate political issues.
Yes.
Because, and this, in addition to the fact that a number of African countries are in turmoil at the time we speak. So the fact that Egypt is getting near the Sahel area with all the problems of the Sahel, which are both migrants and terrorist groups, and a number of issues where Egypt has acquired, unfortunately for us, quite an experience. So you could say that maybe a number of African countries may not be very happy with Egypt coming near the Sahel, but if you think of the interests of Egypt and of Mauritania, it's a very good move.
Indeed. Doctor, also the Egyptian officials say that the Egyptian embassy opens its doors to the Egyptian and Mauritanian investors for enhancing the bilateral economic cooperation. How would you comment on the economic ties between Egypt and Mauritania?
Honestly, we are at the very, very beginning. Egypt has started, and Egyptian companies have started being serious about Africa since only a few years. So they went to first the countries which are growing fast, which have an obvious potential, like Kenya, for example, in East Africa, or Nigeria and a number of West African countries. But the fact that there is this move towards Mauritania, which is not, let's say, in the limelight at the present time, is a very clever move. Because on one hand, we are putting our feet into Northern Africa, and also with a window on the Atlantic, which is also pretty important. And the number of cooperation areas between the two countries is very wide.
Indeed. Indeed, Dr. Dorra Faiani, our economic expert, thank you so much for your very precious input. Always a pleasure to have you with us, Doctor. And indeed, Mauritania is a northwestern African state with 90% of its territory situated in the Sahara. More details about Mauritania